Hey, today we're going to be talking about 3 clever ways to spice up your teacher observations. How many of you have ever put off your teacher observations? I know I have. Um, have you ever had a teacher that needed to be put on a growth plan and you decided, well, let me look for the observations. Let me look for something that's going to have some information so that if I do submit that to the human resources, I'll have some data. But you haven't been doing observations, so you have no data. And what would happen if you scheduled observations to happen every day? So what we're going to be looking at, these clever tools. The first tool is to use standard tools of observations. The second is debrief after your observation. That is, after your observation, within 48 hours, you need to debrief. And we're going to be talking about conducting follow-up observations after you have coached that teacher. Hi, my name is Dr. Barbara Polk. I am an educational consultant. I was assigned by the Texas Education Agency to go into schools that were low performing to help those schools turn around. And I was also chosen by the Harvard Graduate School of Education to help with assisting those schools that came out of the turnaround to stay out of the turnaround and not go back. So if you're responsible for teacher evaluations in your building, this is for you. If you know that observations get delegated to your assistant principals and you're the last one to do your observations, well, this is for you. If you have problems finding time to debrief and with the teachers after you have had the observations within the 48 hours, then this is for you. If you cannot find time to follow up on observations after coaching teachers, this is for you. What I want you to do right now, I want you to hit that share button. I want you to hit that like button. And if you are watching this as a recording, I want you to, in the comments section, put #replay. That'll really help me. So I also want you to go to barbaraypolk.com to look up information about the things that I have to offer to help you and your campus. And also, we want to invite you to join our Facebook Live group, which is a private group where we talk very specifically about how we can improve education. So today we're going to cover some things. Why is it important to get into observed teachers? Why is that important? We'll talk about how your observations can change the culture and the climate on your campus. And the last thing we're going to talk about is what occurs when you don't do any daily teacher observations. You know, I was the principal of a school that was low performing. We turned the school around. And during those times, it was very, very difficult for me to be able to schedule time and get into classrooms. And I know that, that may sound a little strange to some of you, but if you are like me, you know what is going on in that school that takes all of your time. You have things scheduled and you have things that pop up. You have the superintendent who will call for meetings that you didn't have scheduled. You have parents who are having problems with a teacher or an administrator, and you have to meet with those parents. It's just all kinds of things that pop up. And so I know it is very, very difficult for principals to be able to get into the classrooms. And all of the experience that I'm talking about are experience that I had. I would delegate my assistant principals to go into those classrooms and the assistant principals were there. I got there at the very bottom. I said, well, I'll observe the new teachers. Let me do that so I can build them up. But as the days went on, the weeks went on, the months went on, I got in there. I did the best I could. And the best I could was not good enough. I can just tell you right now. Was it tough? Yes, it was. It was very tough for me to get into those classrooms because I did not have fidelity. I did not see teacher observations as something that was going to help to change the climate and the culture on my campus. So yes, I did. I had issues. But when you know, you make things happen. You turn things around. You understand what the priority is. Because, as a principal, everything lands in front of you. You may have your support team, you may have your leadership team, but when it comes to making the decisions, it's on you, principals. And when you do teacher observations, that's on you. I don't care whether the assistant principal did the observation, but when it comes to bottom line, when it comes to going to the board of trustees, it is your responsibility to make sure that those teacher observations are done. So that happens, and it's just a difficult thing. And I'm definitely not saying, principal, that this is an easy thing to do. In fact, it is not. It has to be something that you have your mind made up that I have to do this regardless. I know how important this is. So we turned our school around. And the schools that I work with as a consultant, we are turning those schools around because we are observing teachers in those classrooms. You have to have your data. You have to build the capacity of your teachers. That's why you have your observation. You have to be able to see what's going on in those classrooms. You have to be able to work with those teachers, take little bits and little chunks to deal with, then start coaching them, start observing them, and then have an opportunity to get with them within 48 hours to see what it is that y'all together want to work on. And then when you go back into that classroom, then you can look at just that one little thing. You're not going to be looking at everything. You're not going to be looking at the entire lesson cycle. You're not going to be looking at all the discipline. You're not going to be looking at how he or she does differentiation of instruction. You're looking for one thing. You're looking for things that a teacher can grow on. Remember, research says that it takes 4 to 5 years to build a teacher, build their capacity, to make them feel as though, I got it right. But the thing that you have to remember, principals, is you cannot go in and do evaluations. You cannot go in and help teachers grow if you don't build your own capacity. Now, there are some principals who, don't feel comfortable going into those classrooms. They can run the building, but they just don't feel comfortable going in those classrooms. Well, those days are gone. If you are the instructional leader on that campus, you have to be able to go in and to provide support. And if you don't provide support, then you need to start building your capacity as the principal of their campus. So let's talk about the lesson. We're going to talk about the standard tools that you use to observe. Now, if you're in a state that does not have standard tools, or if you are in a charter school or you are in a private school, whatever is considered as the standard tools of observation, that's what you use. So why would you use a standard tool? Well, you want everybody on the same playing field. You want it all to be equal. You don't want to walk in there one day and just start writing things down on a sheet of paper. You have to be able to work with that teacher so that they can understand what the tool is before you even go in to do the observation. In many states, especially in the state of Texas, you have to have professional development to teach teachers on what you are looking for in that classroom. And all of the things that you're looking for in that classroom are things that's going to help to develop the capacity and build the capacity of that teacher. So you can't just pick up something that you find on the internet or something that someone sent you via email. You heard it was good. No, you can't do that. You have to have a standard tool in order to do a proper evaluation, a fair evaluation. And the second thing you have to do is to debrief with your observations. Now you say, within 48 hours, I have to do my debriefing. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Put yourself on the other side of the desk. You're the teacher. The principal has come in to observe them. They want to know what it is that they did right, first of all, and what they did wrong. And we know there's not a right and a wrong. It's basically, it would be better if you would do things this way, or how did you feel about this? Teachers know their strengths and their weaknesses. They know that, and they want somebody to help. The days of being closed behind the door and you do anything you want to, those days are gone. Those days are over. During the pandemic, when we have online instruction, our learning management systems are in place. Teachers are in front of screens, some of them every day. Some of the teachers who were never in front of a screen before are in front of a screen now. Teachers can be observed from the principal's office if that needs to be done. But we're talking about going into that classroom and doing that observation, and then having your debriefing after you do your observation. So you say, well, I really don't have time. I really don't have time. Well, if you are going to build the capacity of your teachers, you're going to have to get with them within that 48 hours. You either go to them in their classroom, and as a matter of fact, I suggest that you go to them. Don't have them come to you, because you're going to have all kinds of distractions in your office. You go to them. You choose a time that y'all can have a specific amount of time available, and you go through the protocol. You go through your standard tools of observation, and you decide between the two of you one thing that you can work on, so that when you go back to do another observation, you're going to be looking for growth. And then that pulls us into number 3, the third way to spice up your teacher observation, and that is conducting your follow-up observations after coaching. So here you are. How can you develop? So you've had the teacher, you've observed the teacher, y'all have decided this is what it looks like. This is one thing that we're going to work on, and then you're going to have to follow up. Now, if you do not set a schedule to do your observations, you just leave teachers hanging. And that's not right. That's not fair. That's not fair to her. That's not fair to the children. That's not fair to your community, who you are building children to live in that community. That's not fair. It's not fair for you to go in, have your observation, talk about the things that you want to work on, and then you don't come back and follow up. That's not fair. So the third thing that's going to spice up your observation is to go back to have your follow-up observations. Now, you say, well, I'm in a small campus, and it's just me, and I have to do everything. Well, you are going to have to decide just what's important. How are you building your culture? How are you building your climate if you are not following up? How are you building the capacity of your teachers if you're not following up? Because remember, when you go in and you talk about the things that you want to work on, that's called coaching. And I mean, picture yourself, you're an athlete and you've been practicing and the coach is there to direct you. You have a game, you lose the game, and the coach just packs up his bags and go and tell y'all to go home. How are you going to win like that? How are you going to improve like that? Well, that's just the same thing. That's like telling a teacher, I told you what you needed to work on. And this is what, you should be doing. You have your observation, and I'm not even coming back to let you know this is what you did well. Here's the second thing we need to work on. You're building capacity. And you remember in our last class, we were talking about ways that you can recruit and retain teachers. Well, this is the missing piece. This is the missing piece. Teachers want to know how they're doing. They want help. If you're there to help them, if you're there to coach them, if you're there to build their capacity in the way that they are doing their instruction, what you are doing, you are building a climate where that teacher is going to want to stay at that school because they're getting help at that school. Remember, a lot of our teachers that are going through that teacher alternative education program, they have spent lots and lots of money going through the program. They have spent lots of money testing. They have spent lots of money getting tutoring to be able to pass that test. Some of them don't pass it the first time, the second time, or the third time. And every time they take that test, they have to pay more money. They have to study again, just the anxiety of going through that. And then they finally land a job at your school. They have met the qualifications. They qualify. They've passed their PPR. They passed their content. Everything's good. They have a job. They have a contract. That's just the beginning for them in your building. They need your help. Some of them have had a year to stand in front of children until they pass their PPR, but they need help. They need help. Remember, we said in order to develop a teacher, it takes 4 to 5 years. So when you start talking about retaining teachers and keeping teachers on your campus, then conducting your follow-up observations after you have coached your teachers is one of the ways for you to be able to spice up your teacher observations. So as we close today, I'd like for you to stay connected with me. We can have a complimentary discovery call for coaching or training or workshops. But remember this. You have the obligation to be able to observe your teachers. You have the obligation. You have the obligation to use standard observation tools. You have the obligation to make sure that teacher understands what it is that you're looking for. That is an obligation. That is the first step. The second step, again, as we're reviewing, debrief after the observations. Within 48 hours. Within 48 hours. I mean, you're just going to have to do it. Get up there within that 48 hours and do a debrief. And remember, the third thing is to conduct your follow-up observations. So we've done your debrief. This is what we've seen. Now we're ready to do our coaching. So as you prepare for testing, and I know everybody's doing testing right now. I mean, preparing for testing right now. But when it comes to teacher observations, principals, it's on you. It has to be done. It has to be, you have to put in teacher observations, even if you do one observation a day, 1, 2 a week, get it in. So, if you have to do 2 observations, you also are going to have to do 2 debriefing observations. And then you also know you're going to have to come back and conduct a follow-up. I mean, this is serious business. It's a serious business. As I said, this all ties into retaining your teachers. So you go in, you do observation. The teacher doesn't know just, how you decided to come up with whatever you did on that sheet, on that tool. They have no idea. Then, because they don't have an idea, there's not going to be a follow-up. There's not going to be any coaching. And then when it comes to February and March, and you start seeing people turning in resignations, don't be surprised. They need help. The other thing, and one of the most important things before we close, is that if you are in a school that is designated as low performing, or a school that is in need of improvement, you're not going to get lots of people busting your doors down anyway. So it's best that you take whoever you have and you build those people so that you don't get a surprise. If you're in those classrooms every day, you know exactly what you're dealing with. You know exactly what the trends are. You know exactly what's happening in all parts of that building. You get to see what assessments look like, what the formative assessments look like. You can't do that from far away. You can't do that from a distance. You can't give that total responsibility to your instructional coach if you have one. You can't give that responsibility to your assistant principal if you have one. If you are the principal and you have to report to your superintendent, you can't give your superintendent information because you are not in the classrooms. You're putting out fires all over the place and you don't know what's happening to instruction. So what is happening? So Donald Hayes says you cultivate the teachers you desire. That's exactly right. You cultivate the teachers that you desire. And then you won't be having surprises at the end of the semester or at the end of the school year. I mean, that's exactly right. So what we're saying is, as the principal of that campus, and thank you, Donald, as the principal of that campus, then it's incumbent upon you to set aside time for the observations, because the observations are what builds your campus. And once you have those observations, then when you have your PLCs, you're not going to be shooting from the hip. You're going to be talking from what you know that's going on in those classrooms. You will have a different kind of relationship with your teachers because you are not seen there as a threat. You are there to help them. And that's what the observation is about. You don't want teachers to say, oh my goodness, here he comes or here she comes. You have a relationship. We said we were going to be working on how you deliver your objectives and how you determine your objectives, how you teach the objectives. And then when you go back, then you and the teacher can have that conversation. You did a good job at this, but let's work on this. Or how do you feel about this? That's how you spice up your teacher observations. And that's what we're talking about today. How to spice up your teacher observations. So again, go to barbaraypoe.com If you want more information about consulting or workshops or training or keynotes, and of course, go to our Facebook group, Principles on the Come Up. Clever ways to spice up your teacher observations. We'll see you next Monday, 5 p.m. Central. Principles on the Come Up. And if you are seeing this video as a replay, in that comment section, I want you to put hashtag replay. Hashtag replay. Thank you, Donald. Good seeing you. Have a great evening.